This is TWiT.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. Together, ACI Learning and IT Pro entertain and train your team to keep your business performing at its best. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. TWiT listeners who complete the form can receive as much as 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution plan. You'll get the proper quote based on the size of your team. Now on his own, Ryan Shrout. Ryan, I'm so glad to see you again.
It's good to see everybody.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
So tell us, you have a unique perspective because Intel has been really, I think, struggling to get their process down smaller and smaller. They've been kind of stuck at 10 nanometers, 11 nanometers. It must have been, despite all of their protestations to the contrary, a bit of a shock when Apple Silicon comes along and gives all this performance at a much lower power, really great for mobile, something that Intel has struggled with. Intel, still powers most PCs by far, like 90% of all PCs in the world. Microsoft clearly would like to have an ARM platform to compete with Apple Silicon. Both NVIDIA and AMD have said we're going to do that. Intel says we're looking at that. But it was Qualcomm that bought a company called Nuvia, run by former Apple chip designers. In fact, people were so in tune with what Apple was up to that Apple sued them at first. They've dropped the lawsuit, but Apple initially sued them. Qualcomm acquired Nuvia, and this was the debut for, I guess this was the debut for what Nuvia was going to bring to the table. Qualcomm wants to make an Apple Silicon competitor. They want to make Windows on ARM processors. They make a lot of other things. Qualcomm has kind of shifted. They were known for so long. They had the patents on CDMA. They were known for so long for mobile chips. They started to get into network chips, AI, Vision, XR, and desktop in the last few years, thanks to their new CEO. They promised, I'm watching this presentation, some 30% better. They promised better performance than the M2, a 4-nanometer system on a chip, lower power use, 30% less power. What do you think? You were there. You were sitting in the audience. Now, I know you got a free ticket to Maui, but I know you're also...
I did, yes.
You're going to be honest, and I know that.
It's really interesting because this isn't Qualcomm's first attempt to do Windows on ARM. Right?
No,
they've actually been trying to do this since 2017 maybe.
And in fact, they worked with Microsoft on the Surfaces, the 9 and the X with ARM chips, and the promised desktop performance, and did not deliver.
They did not. Yeah. And you look back at those older platforms, because this was before I was at Intel, they had very clear advantages in battery life and connectivity, right? Every device came with LTE as an option, and the battery life was amazing. You could finally close a laptop and come back to it 3 days later and it would still turn on. But the performance was poor. And they found ways to kind of say, oh, we're as fast as a Core i5 in this little environment here and there. But the truth was that the software wasn't ready. They were doing a lot of software emulation at the OS level for different applications. And the performance of these, which were essentially trumped up cell phone chips, right, just didn't have what they needed. So, I think they recognized that. They bought Nuvia like you described. And this is where that reveal finally happened. And the performance claims, I told this when I was talking to them, I said, I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. They're not really expecting this. Cristiano at the beginning, who's the CEO of Qualcomm at the beginning, talked about, single threaded performance faster than the fastest Intel mobile processor today and faster than the M2 Max. Now, devil's in the details a little bit because those were single-threaded results. And when they went to go compare to multi-threaded results, they kind of changed what the comparisons were. So that's why you said they're 30% faster than an M2 in that multi-threaded test, but not faster than an M2 Max. That would have beat it out. But their justification for that, right, is that they were comparing kind of like for like system configurations and pricing and everything that goes along with that. So, but
you're a master of benchmarking. I mean, that was a lot of what you did at PC Perspective.
Yeah.
They used, it was hard to tell because it was such fine print, but I've learned later, Geekbench, right?
Yes.
Was that an appropriate use for the single core anyway?
I think if you're trying to pick one test, Geekbench is probably as good as you can get because it encompasses lots and lots of subtests that kind of all add up into one score. Now, they didn't show me all the subtest scores, and I kind of poked on that a little bit because you could have one or two subscores that are really, really high, and maybe that offsets the average score or kind of the calculated total score. But we'll get that soon enough.
But by the way, that's what was my first thought too when they say things like, and this is one of their slides, best in class CPU performance, 50% faster peak multi-threaded performance versus M2. Or, yeah, we don't have any efficiency cores. They're all performance cores. And we speed step them up to 4.3 gigahertz. So when I see peak, I'm thinking, yeah, that is not sustained speed. This is... They did let
people see the hardware tested in real time.
Okay.
I was going to say they let people test it, but they didn't actually let people test it. They brought you into a room and they had a person there with like, here's the two laptop form factors they had. And, look, we're using the real software. We're just going to hit start and it would generate the result. So I have reasonable confidence in the performance numbers that they showed and that they talked about, but I think there's still a lot more testing to be done, a lot more applications to look at and things.
And we know they made these claims a year ago and didn't deliver. So I'm a little skeptical. Let's say skeptical.
I think skepticism is fine, right?
Yeah, I would love it if they came up with an ARM-based processor.
I would as well.
That Windows on ARM ran as well, for instance, as Windows on ARM runs on a Macintosh running Parallels. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah. I think they would be hard pressed to walk back this performance that they have now. And all indications that I see from talking to other press and analysts that were at that event that have I just came back into the non-working at Intel game a couple of weeks ago, right? And so they've been talking to more people and OEMs and everything else. Seems like it's going to live up to that. And so now the question becomes like, what do they do with it, right? Are they going to get the right systems built with the right partners to really have an impact?
They had Microsoft there. They had Lenovo there. They had HP there. Of course, all of them make Windows on ARM machines now that are kind of suboptimal.
Yes.
We won't know till the summer of next year, right? This is going to be a while.
I mean, before we have systems in like reviewers and consumers' hands, that's going to be May, June timeframe. Computex is a good indicator of it. They'll probably start marching out more performance data and more design win information and really talking about what the devices are going to look like. And it's not a coincidence, right? That they wanted to get this information out before Intel 14th gen processors launch and before Intel Meteor Lake launches.
Well, it almost felt like
M3 comes out
before the M3, which is tomorrow.
Right.
It almost felt like, quick, get this out. I mean, it can't possibly have worked that way. But
they've planned. I mean, yeah, you have to plan that event.
And nobody knew about Apple's event till 2 weeks ago. So yeah,
correct. If anything, it felt to me like the Apple event was just like, we have to go respond to something on this. Yeah.
So they showed slides, almost Apple-like slides without much access information or 0 points, comparing both to Intel's i7, i9, and Apple's M2. I have the numbers look good. The memory bandwidth looks good. The power usage looks good. They're going to have Wi-Fi 7. Of course, they're going to have great radios. That's what Qualcomm does.
There's an interesting part about that though. Is these Snapdragon X Elite parts do not have the Wi-Fi 7 or the 5G modules integrated on them. They are separate modules.
Okay.
So that is a shift from what they've done previously. Like before, they called it the always connected PC, right? Because they really leaned into that cellular connectivity. I noticed as I was listening to the presentations, I was like, it didn't really see much about it. And when I finally asked, it's they're separate modules, right? So OEM will have to choose to include them or not.
It's interesting because I've seen OEMs kind of stop putting cellular radios in their laptops as if people didn't want them. And I guess maybe if you're already paying for connectivity in a phone, you could hotspot. I don't know. I guess the market told them.
If you ever had a cell phone or a laptop with cell coverage with cellular data,
it's nice, isn't it?
You don't go back.
Yeah.
Like it feels bad to go back.
You're
right?
always connected.
It just simplifies everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the hurdle is really the carriers and what are they charging and how do you have to sign up and is it more complicated and those types of things. But then Qualcomm can probably charge, they can cut down on price quite a bit to these OEMs and say, hey, if you want to offer a 5G model to this, you could do so and charge whatever extra you want. But
I've often wondered why PC manufacturers backed off on that, even Microsoft. And I just assumed, they figured there's no market for it, but it's the cost.
Well, if you look at how they did it originally, like it was, think back to the iPad, right? The iPad LTE, you were paying what? $150 more for the device,
and $10 more a month.
Cellular connectivity.
Yeah.
Well, $10 more. Yeah. I mean, your watch costs $10 a month.
How did you know?
Club TWiT.
The idea that you would have to pay $150 to get this extra kind of connectivity you may or may not be using all the time.
Right.
I think it put a sour taste in people's mouths, and that same thing happened in the PC side.
Alex Wilhelm, if you want to call Uber Eats, you go right ahead.
Stop reading my Club TWiT.
I see you complaining in Discord that you're hungry. Do you want a power bar?
No, I am very hungry, but I can't eat while I'm recording because then I will spit food. And also I can't eat before I record because then I sound all raspy.
Oh.
Leo, this is an exercise in me.
We'll wrap this up. I know you're bored by all this CPU stuff. I know.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What I am is jealous because I just checked and my MacBook Pro that I'm on has an M1 Pro and they're coming out with the M3. Now I'm feeling out of date.
It's too better.
And that's much better. So I want it. But on the always on connectivity thing, I was a big fan of the direction we were going for a while and having laptops and everything just be connected to cellular networks. I haven't really thought about it much lately because Wi-Fi is so ubiquitous now. And I wonder if that's the thing that really precluded.
I still think it sucks. As somebody who just has been traveling recently, like every airport makes me, I got to watch some 60-second ad before I can get their 5 megabit internet service.
The security issue of getting on these open access points and
You guys leave the house?
I actually...
You see?
Oh, I now see your problem. Yes, because I've got gigabit Wi-Fi here.
I don't find tethering to my smartphone to be that much of a pain point. I mean,
you don't do it enough. You don't do it enough. I think that's
sometimes it finds a network, sometimes it doesn't. It's odd.
What about
I had to do it every day?
What about NVIDIA and AMD? Because the clock is ticking. Qualcomm got an extra year. They didn't do it last year. They're going to get an extra year. But NVIDIA and AMD both say they're going to do these kinds of, high-speed, low-power chips.
So I read the Reuters news and kind of some of the coverage afterwards. This still kind of surprises me a little because if you're
NVIDIA makes great. Like the Tegra was the X1 was really
but they
good.
Stopped.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like the PC business. So if you're NVIDIA, you're a $1 trillion company. Are you eager to get into a market that is, by all accounts, shrinking and low margin? And, you're already filling up your orders at TSMC for fab space with GPUs you can sell for $10,000 a piece. Do you really want to sell $180, processor? I am quite sure that they're experimenting with it all the time, right? That there's a design team building something that's got, their own integrated GPU in it that would be fantastic. And, maybe they put it in laptops, maybe they're putting it in handhelds like the Steam Deck or, something like that. Maybe it's for the next Nintendo, maybe it's for the next PlayStation handheld. I don't know. And I'm sure AMD is doing the same. Even at Intel, they have teams that are looking at ARM-based designs, RISC-V based designs all the time. So I wonder how much of this is maybe over reading more into that than is necessary. I would be fairly surprised if these actually came to market, because to your point, also this isn't until 2025 that this would happen, right? Because
that's such
Qualcomm's
great
exclusive
insight. This is why I'm so glad to have you on this week, because I didn't really think about it, but you're absolutely right that the real market is in automotive, AI, perhaps XR, and mobile, not desktop computing.
Yeah, or even like laptop computing, right? Laptops are still good.
Did Amon, their new CEO, who really, it is said, took Qualcomm from being a mobile radio company to being this, like NVIDIA, this powerhouse in all these areas, did he maybe make a strategic mistake focusing so much on desktop?
I don't think so, because of their partnership with Microsoft, right? If they didn't have that support, I think this would be a non-starter.
Yeah.
Right. But their move of, they want to go from what he says is a communications company to a compute company.
Right.
That means, I don't want to just make modems that eventually Apple's going to displace me from. I want to be in as many different things as possible, right? And the XR headsets and the partnership with Meta is critical to that. These laptop chips and the partnership with Microsoft is critical to that. And they don't, the edge compute, kind of having a lot of AI acceleration at the edge, I think is going to be really important from them. What they don't play in right now is server, the data center space. That was one of the things they talked about when they bought Nuvia, but clearly not going to happen. So, or at least not happen anytime soon. But I don't think it was a mistake. I think they've got 0% market share, much like AMD, right? Every point of market share they take from Intel is a net positive for them.
It's billions.
And they're smaller companies. Like Intel is worth 10 times as much as Qualcomm probably. And they don't need that frustration maybe.
What is Intel focusing on? I mean, it's interesting. We've talked quite a bit about this idea that they've gone from being an integrated processor company where they both design and build to two different companies, a design company and a build company. In fact, at one point, they said, someday we'll make Apple's chips too, which everybody thought, wow, okay.
And that's Pat's vision, right? Pat Gelsinger came in as CEO. He came in with the idea of creating a US-based foundry company that all the top, that with leading foundry technology that NVIDIA and Apple and Qualcomm and everybody else uses. I think that's still their vision for what
the
Intel
geopolitical timing was good, because we want to reduce our dependence on China, and there's a lot of concern about Taiwan. Of course, Apple's chips are all made by TSMC. Who makes Qualcomm's chips? Is it TSMC?
For the most part, yep.
So they're all made in Taiwan, and everybody's looking at diversifying out of China. So maybe this is a real opportunity for Intel.
It is. If they get the technology, if they get the process nodes right, there's no reason why NVIDIA and Qualcomm wouldn't want to go do that, right? They love everybody. No matter if you're a consumer or if you're a company who's buying something, competition is good. It's going to drive better technology. It's going to drive better pricing, and that's what they want to see, competition for TSMC there. So there will always be this kind of being a proponent and supporting Intel in this endeavor, but they're not going to, sacrifice their profitability for the benefit of Intel or even, patriotism, really.